Hi, welcome back to the Deep Images. We are continuing our series on vampires. I'm going to be talking about one today. I'm with my co-host Rhiannon Clark. So I am going to talk about a movie from 1994 called NADJA, NADJA. I do have a visual aid. My horizontal flip is acting weird, so the writing is going to be backwards. But this is the cover of the DVD. This DVD is out of
Ooh,
print.
cool. Looks great.
No apparent plans to put this on Blu-ray. So,
Mhm.
if you have an extra copy, I would sell it on eBay for a lot of money, but I only have one, so I'm keeping that thing. So this was made, yeah,
Mhm.
1994, and it was a totally independent film made by Michael Almereyda, who went on to do other acclaimed films, independent and more mainstream. I am not familiar too much with his other films. He did have a film called Twister, but it wasn't the movie that was the blockbuster about the tornadoes, but not to be confused. Um, but the word is this stuff's really good. So if any of y'all have seen it, feel free to comment in the comments. This movie was a thing where the stars were right, a confluence of events came together, and to me created something magical. Is very alchemical. Um, as with many films, though, in doing research, you get into the weeds on IMDb and places, and you realize that many, many, many loud, outspoken hostile, angry people hate the movie that you have just seen and felt like all these deep feelings about. So you start to lose faith in humanity for a few minutes. Um, this is a widely hated movie. Not want to say most, but a huge amount of people who have talked about it, including professional critics, all regular people on the internet, say it's pretentious, bloated, art house bullshit. And these are the words that I can say without getting us demonetized. Um, they ride rough on this one. And then when someone puts an
There are a
appreciation,
lot of miserable people. Let's just be real. There are a lot of
they,
miserable people who go onto the internet to complain. So do not go and read a review and not watch something just because a bunch of miserable people have decided that they don't like the movie. Watch it for yourself.
but speaking of NADJA, yeah, it's a widely hated but somewhat loved in some circles, and it was very low budget. There was all these difficulties making it. It was shot on, I believe, most of it was shot on 16 millimeter. It could have been 35. I tried to find confirmation before the show and I couldn't. At one time, I knew this. It looks like it's 16. But another thing they did was, in order to save money and to create this kind of hallucinatory effect, they used this Fisher Price Pixel Vision camera for kids that was made in the late 80s and discontinued.
Mhm.
And Michael Almeretta had one. And so he shot a bunch of scenes. Now, the movie's black and white also. He shot a bunch of scenes with that way. I mean, they don't dominate the movie, but what they are is really you're seeing events through the eyes of vampires. That's kind of just the way
Wow.
he depicts it. And so it's a little pixelated as the
The way it's been shot. Wow.
yeah, but to me it's very cool, and I liked the contrast. The black and white photography is absolutely flawless. It's super high contrast. The blacks are like deep ink, and the lights are like bursting off things, and then all the middle tones are beautiful, and angles are beautiful, and it's just beautiful to look at. And the soundtrack is by Simon Fisher Turner, who went on to do a bunch of other soundtracks and electronic music. Uh, and he gets together some songs by groups that were uh, popular, at least in the alternative rock area of that period. Um, one was, well, the most notable thing is he uses two Portishead songs, including one of their most well-known songs, "Roads," and it fits perfectly. And the trip hop sound is perfect for this movie. Purists won't agree. Like, I don't want to see Nosferatu with tricky soundtrack. That's probably what someone would say. But it's like, wake up, dude. It's the 21st century. So, but Nosferatu is still cool 102 years later. You won't be. So, um, but yeah, so trip hop was kind of coming to a breaking. They had bands like Sneaker Pimps and Tricky and Portishead, blah blah blah. And I love all those bands, frankly. And
Mhm.
it's very dreamy and romantic kind of music. Part of the reason the music was picked was because of the producer of the movie. David Lynch. So David Lynch literally paid
Amazing.
every dime of this movie to be made out of his own pocket. Much
Wow. Ah,
respect.
bless him.
You know, he
Wow, bless him.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had suspected that for many years because it said David Lynch presents, and then he's listed as an executive producer, and his then wife, who worked on his movies at the time, Mary Sweeney, was also an executive producer. But you know, and a lot of
Hmm.
times the executive producer is someone who pays for the movie, or they're the person who creates the property, or both. And yeah, I read that he made sure it was made. I mean, they couldn't get it together, and he was impressed with the idea. He was impressed with the director, and
He believed in it. So he put his money
he
where
did
his
believe
mouth
in it.
was.
And I think it's
Hmm.
unfortunate that his name, which has adorned certain things and given them attention, um, didn't work for this one. I mean, it briefly kind of worked when it went on video, home video. I mean, in theaters, it just failed completely. Um, but I watched it like the week it came out on home video. I got it from Cockbuster Video, you know. Sorry, that's just what I have to call them. And you know, I rented it and of course I loved it. So what is this movie about? Well, it's kind of about the legacy of this really, really famous vampire who's not really an on-screen character per se. And this guy right here, I have an action figure. This is Dracula. This is the Marvel figure.
Ooh,
This is the character as he looked in the
very
two
good.
Dracula comic books, which is hands down my favorite Dracula story. I've got all the issues except the first appearance of Blade. I sold it for
Hmm.
$1,000. I did not regret that one. Not the rest are like worth three or four. But anyway, they modeled him. Gene Colan, the artist, one of the great comic book artists, rest in peace. He modeled his look after Jack Palance in his face, and you can really see it on this figure. But what's funny is Jack Palance had never played Dracula, but a year after the comic book debuted, Jack Palance was cast as Dracula in a Dan Curtis Dracula, and people still can't seem to decide whether that was a coincidence or one influenced the other. But anyway, he's sitting here, and it's kind of a little token thing because some of this kind of stuff happens in the movie. It has a lot of little in jokes about Dracula. So basically, NADJA, the lead character played by Alina Lowenson, who I just find spellbounding, that too, spellbinding. Well, maybe both.
Hmm.
Um, she is she's a Romanian in real life. So like Bela Lugosi, so their accents were authentic, which a lot of people don't believe that when they first see these people. But yeah, there were people who actually
Hmm.
cast, I don't know what they call it now. I call it authentic, but a lot of people get angry. It's to where now, they don't like if a straight person plays a gay person, even. It's a controversy, you know. So for those
Oh,
who are obsessed with authenticity, these were Romanian and Hungarian actors. So Nadja's that accent is the real deal, baby. And
amazing.
she's 200 years old, and she has a
Wow.
twin brother Edgar that she is estranged from. And essentially, this story is told a couple of times in the movie, deliberately repeating the exact same dialogue by two different characters. The exposition, and but hearing Nadja say it, is like, "I was born near the Black Sea, under the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains." And it was like, and she's like
Wow. It
so
was so
gorgeous.
romantic.
She has a
Yeah.
giant hood on. Her hood is just, oh my God, it's perfect. And
Yeah.
she's just an amazing character. The name came from a book by Andre Breton, who was kind of the father of surrealism, called Nausea. And the book is a philosophical and surreal book, and it has a strong female lead, but it's not a vampire story. They just kind of took the inspiration and made their own story. And the story basically it's a sequel to the novel by Bram Stoker. I mean, it's its own take, like many are, but it's like basically, what if he had two children? Now, back then, lore up to that point, generally, I'm not saying this changed it alone, it started changing with different things. The lore always dictated that vampires cannot have children because they're dead. So a dead man can't produce
Hmm.
semen. A dead woman's womb is barren, you know. So
Hmm. Yeah.
somehow
Makes
that
sense.
I'm still with that idea. But
Hmm.
it's more popular now that vampires constantly have regular sex and even have children. That has become a
Okay.
very mainstream idea now. I don't like it, but whatever. But I do
Hmm.
like this movie. Basically, He meets a woman 200 years ago, Dracula. So in the long shots of Dracula, or closer shots where you don't see his face, but he's in a robe, a cloak. I mean,
Mhm.
he just like that cloak. He is played by Peter Fonda. Um,
Mhm.
and then in the close-ups of Dracula, it's footage from the movie White Zombie, which Rhiannon and Nick and I just covered on this channel. His character in that movie was Murder Legendre, but they picked it for a very obvious reason because unlike the Bela Lugosi Dracula movies, he doesn't look anything like Dracula in the novel. But when he gets that
Mhm.
crazy goatee and the forked goatee and the mustache and the white in his hair, he does look like Dracula should look. And so in White
Mhm.
Zombie, even though he's not a vampire, so they took that footage. So essentially, Bela Lugosi plays Dracula. Peter Fonda plays Dracula. Neither of them have any lines. So, and it
Right.
doesn't matter because Dracula's annihilated early on, like the first several minutes. And the person who kills him is Van Helsing, the latest descendant of Abraham Van Helsing, also played by Peter Fonda. But this way you can tell. I mean, this is a period where Peter Fonda had grown his hair back out long, and it was really long. He was he was near my age when he was younger than I am now when he made this movie. Not much, but he looked great. And he had this eccentric kind of suit, like kind of Victorian era. And he rides a bicycle everywhere.
Right.
He's very eccentric, but everything he says is true. He's dedicated to what he does. You know, this is
Mhm.
his mission. This is his family's mission. He spent his whole life hunting Dracula, and he's finally dispatched him. And he believes he's worried because even though Dracula didn't get back him and walk around because he got a stake in his heart. Um, he didn't have time. Something happened, and he wasn't able to cut off the head and burn the body and the head separately. That's one final solution of vampires. So he goes to
Mhm.
Jim. This character, Jim, is his nephew, ostensibly, played by Martin Donovan. And Martin Donovan was a huge mainstay of independent films in the 90s. He played in several Hal Hartley films. And actually, one of the
Mhm.
many, many reasons I rented this movie, other than the subject matter and David Lynch and some of the other actors, is that I had watched Amateur by Hal Hartley shortly before that. Uh, and Amateur starred Martin Donovan, but also starred Alina Lowenson. And so I fell in love with her then. And then, within a year, this movie comes out, different director, same two actors, totally different kinds of characters. Um, and he's kind of like an average Joe. He works too much, and his wife is named Lucy. Obvious, just they always have to make a Lucy in the modern
The
day
Dracula. Lucy.
just to be
Yeah.
funny. They always have to do it. They did
Mhm.
it in Dracula 2000 too. Um, but Lucy is played by an actress named, well, a former actress. She retired not long after she did this movie, and she was only 22 when she did this movie. Her name was Galaxy Craze, which she insists is her birth name, and she's angry at her mom, who was the hippie who named her that.
Oh,
but but it was so
yeah,
just
yeah.
it was distinctive, so she didn't change it. She went on to become an author and has had kind of uneven success. She's still not all that old. I mean, she's several years younger than I am, so she's not she's still, uh
Yeah.
she's
Follow your
still
dreams,
writing,
everybody.
but she's not going to act again. And she's not a very good actress. She's not awful, but she's the worst in the movie. Everyone else, it's kind of embarrassing. This is her first movie, or second at the most. And this is her first co-lead role. And she's just not up to it. That's my only complaint about this movie. I love this movie, uh, but it kind of works because the way they direct it, and this is obviously another Lynch influence, is some of the characters, hers especially, have this very deadpan, quasi hipster kind of delivery. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. Looking out a window and life is just, I mean, that's not the dialogue. It's always one. There's one scene where they're trying to discern if she's been harmed or not, and she's like in a daze, and she's like, Monday I ate an apple and a Diet Coke. Tuesday I had some M&Ms, except the yellow ones, and a Diet Coke. I ate a Diet Coke. She didn't drink them, she ate them. And she says another day, and Peter Fonda's Van Helsing says, Jim, she's a zombie. But he's being funny because is saying that people who act like that, all droll and deadpan hipsters, that they're basically like zombies. Um,
Well,
but her
she's
character,
not wrong.
yeah, her character was ensorcelled at the time that this scene happened, but they kind of make it clear that she lives a banal existence, and like a lot of Gen Xers as they were depicted at that time. But yeah, she's kind of like that kind of person, kind of an attitude of like a grungy and a goth mixed together. But she looks like a grungy. She's got like the flat, long flannel shirts and all this stuff. Um, but anyway, she's not an unlikable character. She's just kind of like, what does she want out of life? And she doesn't have any clue. So in her life comes NADJA, who they meet at a bar. So NADJA, always has the hood and a long cloak. And
Nice, yeah.
but it's New York.
Vampires have the best style, I swear to God.
But she starts talking to Lucy, and of course, she's hitting on her. So here we go with another super common, powerful theme that runs throughout vampirism, vampire films and horror films, the lesbian vampire trope, which at some periods in time took over the whole vampire. I mean, in the 70s, there were zillions of lesbian vampire movies, and they're still making them. So this is 1994, and this is, they're all inspired by Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, which, Carmilla is a lesbian vampire novel written 25 years before Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. And it is the single most, I would say, I mean, Dracula is the most influential because of its popularity and adaptations. But as far as like deep influence, if you just go back to the beginning, Carmilla is really the most influential, because he did it first. Got to give the guy credit. And people are still reading it
Yep.
today. Still a best-selling book. He's been dead for 150 years or whatever. Um, so it's that kind of thing. It doesn't have a plot like Carmilla. It just takes that basic kind of idea. And that idea was also used in movies about Countess Bathory, who was a real person, but in some movies she's depicted as a woman who bathes in the blood of virgins. In other movies she's depicted as a literal vampire, like in Daughters of Darkness, which we covered last Halloween. Kaylin, our producer, co-producer at the time, covered Blood and Roses and Daughter of Darkness in the same session, two of the kind of iconic. And then I covered Vampires with a Y, which is very sexy,
Very good.
graphic one from that same time period, the 70s. Um, so this is a nice air. It doesn't get sexually explicit, but it does not pull any punches either. They go back to the house. Jim's out with his uncle Van Helsing, trying to figure out what to do about Dracula. He doesn't believe in Dracula. Jim thinks he's insane. He loves him, but he thinks he's totally insane. And at the apartment, you start to see through the pixel vision camera. You see it's like Nadja's POV of Lucy and their apartment. And then they start talking and they make out a little bit, and she doesn't waste any time. She acts much more like a man than a woman, Nadja. She
She
just
was assertive.
she just puts her
Goes
hand
for it.
right down in her panties. Doesn't know, I mean, other than a
Hmm.
kiss, no foreplay whatsoever. And of course,
Straight in, no kissing.
predictably, but also I think clever. When she takes her finger out, it's covered in menstrual blood. And why aren't there more
Hmm.
movies where they're drinking menstrual blood? I know there are a few, but
Yeah.
it's
I kind of had I sort of thought of that was going to happen, but yeah, I'm glad they went there.
I'm glad they went there too. And I yeah, and she like kind of puts some on Lucy's lips, and they
Her lips.
kiss,
Oh
and
yeah.
then the implication is yes, they get like deep into it off camera. So Um, depending on how you feel about such scenes with these kind of beautiful women, we were either cheated or spared, depending on your point of view.
That's funny.
I
You're
don't
like,
have an
oh no, or
I
oh
don't have an
thank
opinion
God.
either way, but I don't never mind seeing Alina Lowenson naked. So I don't know. She probably still had the hood and cloak on though, and naked underneath. But so Jim gets
Funny.
back, and his wife now has been, she's been bitten, not enough to become a vampire, but she's bitten like the first time. This is kind of some of the lore, like when they're bitten three times, or and then like 3 nights after, then their turn or whatever. I'm probably getting the math wrong, but So she's more of a servant. She's kind of like a familiar. She's under her spell. Yeah, you have to have this dominating old school vampire woman, and they prey on kind of the innocent, completely non-lesbian character, and you have to turn them to vampirism and to lesbianism, and the two kind of become
Oh.
like that. Um, so in this movie, if she doesn't succeed at turning her into either, but not for lack of trying. So uh, she basically has her hypnotized, and so Lucy starts to become really an obnoxious thorn in the side of Jim and Dr. Van Helsing because she's like she just does whatever the hell she wants, and she does have some vampiric qualities. Her strength is increased, her durability is increased, and she doesn't give a fuck about anything. So she literally throws Jim into a bar, and she's only like 5 feet tall. He's like 6'2" or something. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so they eventually get to the point where the goal of NADJA is to first of all get the body at the morgue. And in this scene, she also has a familiar named Renfield. I don't think it's supposed to be the exact same Renfield as the novel. My theory, which I strongly believe in, is that he's just some goth kid. And by the way, he was from Dublin, Ireland, and so was the actor.
No way. No
He's
way.
he's the
That's wild.
he's the worst actor in the movie. He is just terrible. He hasn't had much of a
Oh
career.
no.
But he started as a model because he was a goth hipster, lanky dude in the early '90s. So everybody's like, ooh, and I,
Yeah.
then doesn't do anything for me. I mean, he was a good dresser. He's a good dresser. I didn't personally find him attractive as a heterosexual. Not, I don't mean because I'm not gay. I mean they're
Well, no,
heteros
I think you're saying that he wasn't a good actor, so therefore you weren't attracted to him.
that and he was playing a repellent character and not playing it that well, making him more repellent because he mumbles his lines. And my DVD here doesn't have optional subtitles, so I just struggle every time he's talking. I had to,
I think that sometimes when people are really good actors, they can like make anybody attracted to them, and that's the point of their character or whatever. That's what they're playing.
and conversely, the really haughty actors who can't act blow it. Not all the
Mm.
time. Sometimes they become huge and we have to suffer through them for 20, 30 years. But this guy didn't inflict that on us. I'm sure he's a wonderful, sweet person, but his character was
Yeah.
horrible. And he, as acting, was just, it was for a character who's basically not much more than a zombie who talks some and mumbles. It was serviceable. And when I said he looked cool, yes, he was well dressed, but like there are men that I, as a heterosexual man, think are nice looking and cool looking. I did not like his hair or his face or his voice or any of that. I thought he was,
You're roasting this Dublin man.
well, I am, and
Roasting
not
him.
because he's from Dublin. I do this sometimes on the
Okay,
show.
cool.
I do this sometimes on the show, and Briggy calls me out. Briggy's like, "You just jealous," and so now we have like this
No,
routine.
I'm just saying you're roasting him now.
Well, I've been holding this
That's
in.
all I'm
I've
saying.
been into this movie for 30 years. I've been holding this in a long time. My resentment of Renfield.
That's okay. You
Because
can say it.
it
Go
was
for it.
driving me insane the other night. I'm like, I had my TV up to 60. I have a giant HD
Jesus.
TV, and I couldn't fucking hear this guy. He's like, no, just like little infield, and he's like, and I'm like,
Oh no.
what?
It was like he was acting with a hand over his mouth.
Yeah, I watch all movies with subtitles in English language
Oh yeah,
because
me
my
too.
hearing in one ear isn't perfect from years of playing and hearing music. But so and also I like to know the dialogue. I like to know how the characters' names are spelled. I'm just that way. I'm obsessed
hmm
with knowledge.
I
So
love I love watching the subtitles as I'm watching a movie. It doesn't pull me out of the movie. Some people don't like
oh,
subtitles because it pulls them out of the atmosphere of the movie, but I enjoy
but if you
subtitles.
read it, you've just basically did the same thing as when you read a book. So the next time you
Yeah.
see that movie, you know what they're gonna say. You don't even need to
hmm
read the subtitles anymore, really. I mean,
hmm
there's foreign language movies that I read the subtitles, and then later I'm telling somebody the dialogue, and I'm like, this guy said blah 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 in English. I'm saying it in English, and they're like, well, he didn't really say that. He said it in Japanese. I'm like, yeah, but in my head, I heard it in English because I read it in English.
That's
So,
funny.
and I'm marrying that with his Japanese physical performance. And
Mhm.
so brain does weird things. So anyway, um, Naja wants to get vampires. My brain is fried. Wants to get Dracula's body. And another thing I want to say real quick, and I said this in the last one of the last installments because I actually had just read these researching for this session. IMDb and Wikipedia have so many things wrong about this movie. Like they never even bothered once to watch this movie. And then the people who are angry and hate the movie took those facts that were wrong and used those as further excuse to knock the movie. And it's like one guy on Wikipedia it says they are the children of an unidentified vampire who's supposed to be a
Mm.
classic, mortal, powerful vampire who's killed, strongly implied to be Dracula, but the word Dracula is never used in the movie. And I'm like, it's used like three times. It's true. Van Helsing doesn't call him Dracula, none of the common people. But when Nadja and her brother say their family name, it ends with Dracula. So I guess that mispronunciation
Oh,
fucked them up, right? They're like, that's not Dracula. I'm like, you're right. It's the correct pronunciation. It's not American.
hmm. It's a
And
Transylvanian
it is, yeah. And so she's like,
pronunciation.
and then the morgue attendant, he looks totally clueless, and he is played by David Lynch. And of course, he had
Yay.
fabulous hair back then. It wasn't gray, but it was still
Oh
fabulous.
yeah.
And he's just like,
Hmm.
what are you doing? And she's like, we are come to see the body. And he's like, okay, well, you can come in, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, we are taking the body. And it's a great shot
Oh,
because it's looking up at them. It's from Lynch's point of view. And she just looks so majestic. She's like, we are taking the body. And I was like, so this is like a female Bela Lugosi, man. And so you don't see what happened. They hypnotize him. You see that. They hypnotize him and
hmm.
he lets them in. And then what they decide to do, which Van Helsing didn't think they were going to do this, but he underestimated how much Nadja hated her father. They cremated him to make sure he'd never come back. They like completely cremated him to nothingness. So they beat him to it. And they kept his ashes in an urn to honor him
Ah.
like a human would, I
Oh.
guess. So her goal is to find her brother who is ill. They have kind of a psychic connection. And the whole lore of the vampire being able to impregnate a woman and have two children, uh, they don't go deep into it, but essentially, Edgar's not a vampire. I mean, he's a little
Hmm.
shy of sunlight. He's a little anemic, but he's not a vampire. Nadja was born a vampire and is way more
Oh.
powerful than Edgar. Edgar right now is in a coma, and he's in like North Dakota with this nurse named Cassandra, who's in love with him, and he's in love with
Ah.
her. But since he's in a coma, they can't talk about it. It's kind of funny. There's a lot of
Sleeping
little,
Beauty.
yeah, there's a lot of weird, quirky little. A lot of people hated that too. I got all the jokes, and I thought it was great. But it's more
That's funny.
horror fans need to branch out a little bit. I'm sorry that you didn't watch the heyday of American independent cinema, which were mostly drama and comedies. And then when those techniques are applied to a vampire movie, y'all freak your fucking mind out. It's like, dude, get some culture. Calm down. It's not all about the gore. Honest, it's
Hmm.
not. Um, Pet peeve of mine. But so yeah,
It's all good.
they get him. I mean, they're going to get Edgar. And these people, they use this line in the promotional materials, which is from Dracula, the novel, except they add the sport at the beginning. They say, hurry, the dead travel fast. And I researched the dead travel
Ah.
fast, and that was also very fascinating where Bram Stoker got that phrase. I didn't know that. But um, visually, it's kind of like Jean Cocteau's Orpheus, where he descends into the underground, which, by the way, is one of David Lynch's favorite movies, and he did replicate the descent into the underground in Twin Peaks: The Return. Well, it hit me when I rewatched it. He replicated it. He had Michael Almerita replicated in this movie, and in
Mm.
black and white, like Orpheus, whereas the Twin Peaks was in color. But It's like they're going down, and there's like just the lighting, and a lot of times they like shoot Alina Lowenson.
Hmm.
She's on like some kind of trolley moving thing, and the background is not in deep focus. It's like kind of out of focusy, and so she's like gliding ever towards you to this incredible Portishead song. And it's just like, and another thing people hated about this movie is they said it tried too hard to be hip and cool. And I'm like, man, it's fucking cool. Shut up. It is cool.
Maybe it is cool. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
give
Stop
give
being
it
so
give us a break.
jealous. They're
Um,
jealous.
I was feeling it. I mean, I am Gen X, and I was in my 20s when I first saw this movie, and I was getting it. A lot of
Mhm.
stuff I did not get, like grunge, I didn't get. Tarantino, I didn't get really. I liked him briefly, but this was right on my wavelength. I got the jokes. I was the fusion of music and sound and images. It's like, wow, and that's when what turned me on to David Lynch in the first place. He kind of pioneered a lot of the style of this movie with Eraserhead. Eraserhead kind of changed cinema. Um, but yeah, they decide that they're going to go get Edgar, and of course, uh, Van Helsing's going to chase them down. But their main concern is because Lucy's like out of her head and trying to get away, trying to be with Nadja, and she finally goes and is with Nadja. And they kind of figure out that, well, of course, Van Helsing figures out that she's been, you know, lightly vampirized. She's come under the spell. Jim, of course, has gotten the intimation that they've had sex. He's not really freaking out jealous about it. He doesn't really know what to think. Apparently, their marriage was like they're very, very in love and fond and nice to each other, but there's some kind of underlying tension. And a lot of it is because Lucy is filled with this Gen X existential angst and ennui. Oh, life, this kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's kind of a drag to be around.
That's not gonna get people in the mood.
No. Do you want to have sex? Maybe. That's us tags. Um, and it is sexual, but her sexual responses from Naja, not her husband, really. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so it gets get a little tangled. So essentially, the dead do travel fast. That was my point in saying that 100 hours ago, is that the dead travel fast, and everybody gets somewhere really quick. Like Lucy gets a
Mhm.
cab, and they deliberately do this. She starts to hail a cab, and they cut, and then she's down, and then they cut, and she's getting into the cab. And of course, everybody does this nowadays to save time and move things along. And that technique, a lot of it came from Jean-Luc Godard in the early '60s, and it was considered very taboo. It's like we must stick with classic cutting. We cannot do that. Well, I'm like, dude, man, get a break. And now it's super. I see it on TV shows all the time. Especially horror movies too. It does save time and money. You don't have to have everything spelled out if you have a brain. And
Mhm.
they do that in this movie, so it's like they can't catch Lucy. So that's the first time they kind of riff on that. They can't catch Nadja, even though she's drifting in slow motion, and they're running behind her, and they can't catch up with her. And finally, the plane rides these people go on are like that. I mean, this story realistically would have had to play out over like 4 days. I think it's like 1.5 days, and nobody has any problem affording a ticket. I mean, they're rich. Jim isn't rich. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, vampires are rich.
first,
Hmm.
yeah, Nadja is rich. She even tells I think she tells Lucy how she became rich. Exactly. And she told her the truth. She doesn't tell her yet she's 200 years old, but she tells them that basically her father, gave them the spoils of his conquests, and then there you go. Gold, like real shit, like gold.
Hmm.
So they fly to South Dakota like that, and they go to rescue Edgar, and Edgar's all messed up. And when he sees Nadja, he just freaks out. He can't talk yet. He's just coming out of the coma. And then
Hmm.
Renfield comes in, and I think Nadja was trying to do it with a little bit of subtlety by just intimidating Cassandra. But Renfield's kind of like he's kind of a thug. Yeah, his answer is violence. Let's just kill him. And it's like, okay, Renfield, go ahead. And and he's a buffoon, but it's on purpose. I mean, Renfield in the novel and most movies is a buffoon. I'm not saying you should make fun of the fact he eats cockroaches or has been vampirized, but he's always depicted as this very broadly caricatured crazy person. almost
Hmm.
almost to the point where it's just unbelievable, even in a horror movie. But that's how he's always been characterized.
He's dramatically crazy,
Whereas this
aren't they?
Renfield is deadpan. He's not over the top, but he is his brain is checked out, and he's a slave. And she even introduces him to Cassandra. She's like, "Who are you people?" She's like, "I am Nadja. I am Edgar's sister. This is Renfield. He is my slave." Well, Jim and Van Helsing catch up with them and get a hold of Lucy. Nadja, in chasing them, comes to this garage and these mechanics. She vampirizes them, and then a cop shoots her and shoots her in the side. It's not a fatal because it's not silver or wood, but it is painful. And so then she sets into motion something that makes the garage explode in a fire. Like
Okay.
there's a lighter, there's some gas, and she survives the explosion. And
Hmm.
her wounds mostly heal, but you know, unfortunately,
Special vampire healing
but it maxed out her
or
metabolism.
energy.
So she has to have
Okay.
blood, and she can't have
Mhm.
just any blood. She's now got to have
Okay.
blood of the soil of her homeland, Transylvania. So then they do
Oh.
they do a map thing, just like they did the year before or two in
Mhm.
Ram Stoker's Dracula. When you show the Transylvania and they're going up the map. So they go there again. The plane is it show the one shot of the plane. They show the map, and then they're there, and you have no clue how much time passed. It would have to
Mhm.
have been like 14 hours. But so they're in Transylvania, and they get to the castle. And by the way, the castle was filmed. This was a very low budget movie. It was filmed in a abandoned hospital in New York. So
Okay.
it's weird. Somehow they pull it off. Uh, because there aren't too many. There's only like mainly one set. But again, this movie was all shot on location. It had no sets.
Hmm.
Once they get there, Edgar has by this time recovered somewhat, and Edgar wants to go with them because they have kidnapped Cassandra. They let Lucy go. Well, she got away from them, but they kidnapped Cassandra as a bargaining chip. They're going to go. Nadja's going to get the blood, but Nadja has all kinds of other machinations and schemes in her mind that only Renfield knows about. And you know, because she's very philosophical. It ties in also with the other movie we talked about, The Addiction. She does a voiceover intermittently through the movie, and it's always like these self-reflections. And they're more
Nice.
simple than the stuff in The Addiction, but they're still like she's like, I just want to have a life. I want to be happy, in this voice. And
Yeah.
it's like, is that really all she wants? And that is all she wants. I mean, her way of going about it is not exactly conventional, but
Are vampires philosophers, basically?
some of the best ones are.
Starting to think. We're starting to think this now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, they go there and
They have a long time to think, I guess.
yeah, they have like 14 hours. So, oh, vampires have a long, yes, they have
Yeah.
centuries. So, they get there and Jim and Lucy, who's kind of snapping out of it, uh try to fend off the violent Renfield who's shooting at them. He was shooting at them when they were coming at the cast. He just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting like mindlessly. And Cassandra tries to get away and knock him down and take the gun, but it's not successful. um but they hit him and he lunges forward. And with all the times I'd seen the movie before, I thought that he is impaled on like a fence spike. I mean, they're indoors, but it's some kind of, I can't really describe it. It's some kind of thing I guess it was supposed to be for a fireplace. I have no idea. And I'm no good at this. So, uh, I thought it was an accident. It's made of silver and it kills them. But in rewatching it, he killed himself, you know.
Okay.
So even though he was trying to kill them like 2 seconds before, the reason he killed himself, well, this is also what I didn't notice the other times I watched it, is because uh, Cassandra, who they've reined back in, Cassandra and Nadja have been linked together in this blood transfusion thing. So yes, the blood has to happen in Transylvania, but it doesn't actually come from blood that's laying around in Transylvania. It just has to be on their home soil. It can be anybody's blood, and she just decides, I don't like Cassandra, I don't like Edgar being with Cassandra. I'm just gonna just totally transfuse all of her blood into me and heal my wounds here. And by this
Okay.
time, when they knock off her hood at one time, you find out she's totally bald. She had such cool,
Oh,
stylish hair, very 90s. It was she hadn't didn't shave her head for the role. You can, I mean, it doesn't look silly, but you
the
can
ball
tell
cap,
it's
is
not.
that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And but apparently that was supposed to be a shocking moment because they punctuated it with music, and I was just like, okay, who cares? She's still beautiful. I don't care anyway.
yeah.
Um, but so they're doing
That's
this
funny.
transfusion, and Van Helsing and Edgar decide they're going to kill Nadja while she's helpless doing this. And Edgar feels really weird about it. And Van Helsing, of course, is better matter of fact about it. And you think, hey, man, 'cause he's kind of a hippie. He's like, hey, man, no, no, don't look away. Hold that, because they fail the first time. And so
Mhm.
when Renfield sees her being staked, I guess he figures when she dies, I have nothing. So he just pushes the silver thing into his heart and dies. So
No.
there you go. The villains are eliminated. Everybody's happy. However, you have a voiceover from Nadja that indicates, and there's another one later that makes it clear that she has done what occasionally has happened in vampire films, not often. She's transferred her consciousness into Cassandra. Cassandra is gone. Her body,
Mhm.
her body houses Nadja. So from then on, when you see this actress playing Cassandra, she's playing Nadja basically. But to not make it too jarring, they still have the Nadja voiceover with her cool voice. And she marries Edgar as they planned, but she's actually really now marrying her brother. Uh,
That's weird. Yeah.
yeah, that I didn't see that come. I knew there was some kind of weird thing between them, but I thought it was kind of just anger. I know he's not attracted to her, but I guess she was attracted. Nadja was a romantic. She was attracted to a bunch of people in this movie. She
Yeah.
was definitely pansexual, and but she just wanted to be happy. And they showed their wedding, and Jim and his wife are there, and nobody knows. Cassandra. I left a huge important thing out. Not that important, but there are a lot of soap opera-ish elements to the script too. They're kind of funny. Again, that's something David Lynch was into. That's why we got Twin Peaks in the first place. Cassandra is Van Helsing's niece, also. But we learn at one point in the middle of the movie, for some reason, that Van Helsing really is Jim's biological father. Uh,
Okay.
and then the implication when they meet Cassandra, because Jim's like, Cassandra, my cousin, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? In North Dakota with this guy in the coma. And who
Mhm.
would have figured? And not unusual in a soap opera. And then, when she's in danger, Van Helsing's like, you got to save your sister, Jim. And Jim hasn't had any time to process this whole, soap opera biological parent reveal thing. So that never really gets sorted, but it doesn't really matter because, they go to Jim goes to his sister slash cousin's wedding and thinks it's her, and she fools everybody. And they show Cassandra now dressing a little more, not the hood and everything,
Mhm.
a little more like Naja. And but she can walk in daylight, and she's with the voiceover, she's like philosophizing, and it's very simple, and a lot of people hated it, whatever. But she's basically like, uh, "Am I me? Do I hear a voice? Is that voice Naja?" So I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's Naja talking, but she's talking as if she's Cassandra, who the implication was Cassandra's consciousness is obliterated. So she's talking about herself as like the third person, and she's
That's
like."
very strange. Yeah.
She's like, is that Naja I hear? I love her intonations. And she's kind of sad. She's really a sad character. And she's like, "Oh, is that me? Myself?" And just like this just gets into this like little existential pocket where we don't know. Why are you asking us? And the movie ends. But it's like we have no idea. But I felt sorry for her. She is happy
Yeah.
finally, but she's got to constantly play the charade. And so I guess the voice, there may be like still some internal um, fight between Cassandra's spirit and hers. I don't know. But I think it also means that she finally feels she found her identity because she finally gave up being a vampire and she was happy. But then she's starting to question it already. Um, why is she questioning it? Because Cassandra's voice is talking to her, like, "Let me out, you bitch." Um, because Nadja's body was destroyed, after
Hmm.
they staked her. So it's a lot to ruminate on. Beautiful cinematography, wonderful hip dialogue and humor, but very
I can't
dramatic.
wait to see it now. I actually can't wait to see it because I
The
can't wait
look
to
of
see
it
what you're
is
talking
great.
about.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it's kind of it's when a lot of indie movies, not just in America, were shooting in black and white to save money. Like Tetsuo the Iron Man in Japan was just that changed the whole game on cyberpunk films, and that was in beautiful black and white, high contrast. And I love black and white. There's some people who say that all movies should be black and white, and there's some people who say all movies should be color. I take it a case by case basis. It just depends on the
Yeah,
work. But this one,
indeed.
these two movies that we have covered now together um, are from the same period, 1 year apart, and you know, um, both come from independent roots from New York. New York filmmakers and actors, and I'm excited. I'm excited to have this addiction on Blu-ray. I hope NADJA will come out on Blu-ray, but yeah, you should watch both of these: The Addiction by Abel Ferrara and NADJA by Michael Almerita, produced and funded by David Lynch. I
Ooh,
cannot go a few minutes without mentioning him if he's involved in something. But Twin Peaks
indeed.
is David Lynch. Um, so before we go, um, Rhiannon wanted to impart something upon the audience that I think is very important.
Well, guys, if you really enjoy what you've seen today, please like and subscribe. It would help us out hugely, and join the tribe of people who like really good movies and who like talking about really good movies. More the merrier.
Absolutely. So yeah, please help us out. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, but we need your help. Hope you enjoy our work, and we'll be back soon with more vampires. Thank you for watching.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.